Okay, we're live. It's just me today, no Carson. I wanted to talk about Oklahoma State's bowl game. They're going to the Liberty Bowl on New Year's Eve, obviously December 31st, playing against Missouri in Memphis. So if you're an Oklahoma State fan, you'll be headed, if you're going to the game, you'll be headed to Memphis for New Year's Eve. I don't know if that's the most exciting trip, but it is a good opponent. It's a good matchup. It's a lot better than what was floated out there at times. I saw Tulane in the Armed Forces Bowl, which is in Fort Worth. We called that the Jalen McCleskey Bowl. Would have been not great. The Cheez-It Bowl sounds bad. It's actually a worse bowl than the Liberty Bowl, but the locale is better. It's in Phoenix. It's part of that Fiesta Bowl family. So yeah, I think the opponent in Missouri is actually pretty good considering what it could have been. Missouri went 8-4 in 2018. They finished the year on a 4-game winning streak, and Oklahoma State obviously has a long history with Missouri, having been in the Big 12. Mike Gundy's 3-2 against Missouri with that 2008 game when Missouri was ranked 3 in Columbia, being kind of the crown jewel. Last time they played was in the 2000, I think it was the 2014 Cotton Bowl, the Clint Shelf year when Oklahoma State went. What did they go? 10-2, I think, in the regular season, or maybe 9-3, and then got to the Cotton. Should have won the Big 12 that year. The Justin Gilbert interception drop when Baylor went on to win the Big 12. And Oklahoma State ended up losing to Missouri in that Cotton Bowl. So a good history there, a good opponent. There was talk about it being Vanderbilt in the Liberty Bowl, which wouldn't have been as good as a Missouri team that went 8-4. We'll get to Missouri in a second, but send in questions if you guys have them about anything. We posted a lot on the site this week about recruiting, about just kind of the disappointment of this year and the disappointment of kind of some of the stuff that Gundy said and did. And you know, I think that that stuff is important to address. It doesn't mean that we hate Mike Gundy or that we think Oklahoma State's the worst program in the country. It's just interesting stuff to talk about when it comes to Oklahoma State football. So I hope people enjoyed that. And yeah, send in questions if you got them. I got everything pulled up right here to see your questions. So let's see here. Everything pulled up right here. Okay. Real quick, I'll get to some of these questions, but real quick on Missouri. So Missouri had the opposite season of Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State goes 6-6. They beat all these ranked teams, but then they go 3-5 as a favorite. So they go 3-1 as an underdog, 3-5 as a favorite. Missouri went 7-2 as a favorite, or excuse me, yeah, they went 7-2 as a favorite, which means they went 1-2 as an underdog. They lost the games that they lost essentially were against top 15 teams. They played 4 top 15 teams. They played Alabama, they played Georgia, they played Kentucky, and they played Florida. I think those are the 4 top 15 teams that they played, and they lost to 3 of them. You turn that around, Oklahoma State beats all these top 15, top 20 teams that it plays. So really they had very different years, and I have no idea what that means for how they're going to be matched up in a bowl. I don't know a ton about Missouri. We're going to have some stuff on the site either on Sunday or Monday just about what to know about them, who they are as a team, how they match up with Oklahoma State. But it should be fun. It's one of those games where I would rather it be, I don't know, Michigan or Oregon or one of these teams that you're not that familiar with, but that's a big time program. Missouri, they're a big time program, but you're more familiar with them because they were in the Big 12. So from that sense, I don't love it, but it's certainly better than playing a Vanderbilt. It's certainly better than playing a Tulane, a Houston, a Memphis, somebody like that. And it should be, I think Missouri's only played in 1 bowl game since 2014, which was kind of shocking to me, and they didn't win it. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, they're going to be excited about being in a bowl, even though it's the Liberty Bowl. Oklahoma State fans usually travel well to a bowl, so it should be a pretty well-attended bowl game considering kind of where it's at on the pecking order. It's OU in the playoff, Texas in the Sugar Bowl. Who went to the Alamo? Iowa State, I think, went to the Alamo Bowl. West Virginia in the Camping World. Baylor in the Houston or in the Texas Bowl in Houston, and then Oklahoma State in the Liberty Bowl. So it's pretty far down there, but I think for how far down it is, it's going to be a pretty well-attended game. Let's talk about the Baylor thing. Oklahoma State's basically one play. I don't know who Baylor's playing in the Texas Bowl. I haven't seen that yet, but Oklahoma State's one play from getting into the Texas Bowl, which is it's frustrating when you look at a team like Baylor, a team like TCU, for them to finish ahead of Oklahoma State in the Big 12. Was Baylor better than Oklahoma State this year? Was TCU better than Oklahoma State this year? I mean, they beat them, so I guess so. But that was, I think, my biggest frustration with the season is not, and I wrote this on the site this week, it's not necessarily that Oklahoma State went 6-6. It's how they went 6-6. It's proving 3-4 times that you can play with top 10 teams, top 20 teams, and then losing to TCU, losing to Kansas State, losing to Texas Tech, losing to Baylor. It's both infuriating and flabbergasting. And I know that, Mike Gundy feels the same way, but I don't get paid $5 million to figure out why that happened. So let's see here. Let's go to a few questions. Do you think another quarterback will play? No. Gundy has he's proven over and over again that Cornelius is the guy. I wonder, there's absolutely no way to determine this or to figure it out, but how many teams have gone through a season only playing their first and fourth string quarterbacks? We've talked about this. Carson and I talked about this on the podcast if you've listened to it. It's such a weird thing. And for, obviously it's good that Cornelius hasn't gotten hurt, but for them to only play their first and fourth string quarterbacks, when has that ever happened before? It's such a bizarre deal, but I don't think anything changes in the bowl game. I think this just is what it is. And the only question for me is, when is Spencer Sanders named the starter in 2018? And knowing Mike Gundy, it'll be the Monday before the Oregon State game. Is that a pullover or a full zipper jacket? It is a pullover. Any word on Justice and the bowl game? I've talked to some people about Justice, and more importantly than talking to those people, I think if you read between the lines, I was sitting in the Gundy presser after the TCU game, and the way he was talking about Justice Hill did not make it seem like it was probable that he was going to play in the bowl game. And that's obviously not definitive. Anything could happen. I have no idea. Nothing's been announced. I think they're going to keep that under wraps until whenever Gundy has this first press conference. It might be, I think there's a press conference, or there's a phone conference on Sunday night. We're going to try to have one of our guys on that phone conference. But I would lean toward Justice Hill not playing in this game and then declaring for the NFL draft and moving on. I have no idea if that's going to happen. That's just sort of how I feel about the situation right now. Baylor gets Vanderbilt. Okay, I didn't see that. Baylor Vanderbilt in the Texas Bowl. How about that? How does the Texas Bowl? Chris Knox brought this up in our site chat. How does the Texas Bowl choose Vanderbilt over Missouri? I don't get. I guess Missouri played in the Texas Bowl last year whenever Tom Herman made fun of their quarterback. By the way, Texas. I don't enjoy Texas. Herman's weird. Ellinger is kind of annoying. I found myself rooting for OU in the Big 12 title game. That's how annoying that their organization, their team is right now. That's very, very strange. Will the injury for Justice make him more likely to leave or likely to come back for his senior season? I think leave. I just, what do you have to prove if you're Justice Hill? You've gotten 715 touches between receiving and rushing in your college career. You're not getting younger. There's no leap to make. I don't think for his senior year. I think he just is what he is, and especially to an NFL scout, you are what you are, and so all you're doing is taking a year off of the end of your career in terms of being paid. So you can either get paid for one more year or you can be at Oklahoma State for one more year. So to me, that makes the decision pretty easy. Will Drew leave during the offseason, or do you expect him to sit behind Spencer? I got to double check on this. I don't think he can leave. I don't think you can transfer back-to-back years. I need to look into that, though. I'm not positive. Will Oklahoma State hire a special teams coach in the offseason? I hope so. I wrote this week. I don't understand how you go into this season and have two defensive line coaches. No offense to Greg Richmond or Joe Bob Clements. They're both great. Joe Bob's great. I think Richmond has done a good job, especially on the recruiting trail. I think he's been pretty good. But when special teams is so obviously an issue, I mean, do you need better players? I don't think so. Oklahoma State has their players are fine. They've got good skill guys on special teams. Their kicker's good. Punters seem to be pretty good. You have to have organization there. You have to have somebody who is held accountable for all the things that have gone wrong with special teams. I said this time last year when the 10th assistant coach was implemented into college football. How is that not a special teams guy for Oklahoma State? I don't get that. And yet they're probably going to go into 2019 without a special teams assistant. So I think that to me is frustrating because it seems like such an obvious, I don't know if it's a fix or an answer, but it seems like such an obvious thing that you need, and they just don't do it. Who do you have winning it all? I don't know. I guess Alabama. I don't know if I mean, it's boring to pick them, but here's the thing that people don't understand about Alabama, I think. That Alabama-Georgia game was awesome, by the way. I saw the end of that. It was incredible. Alabama's offense is, the whole talk going into the Alabama-OU game is going to be Alabama's defense against OU's offense. Alabama's offense is going to torch OU's defense. OU's defense is so bad. I don't know where Alabama ended the year, but for most of the year, they were far more efficient on offense than OU was. Now, they get fewer possessions in a game. They only get 7, 8, 9, 10 possessions, whereas OU's getting 13, 14, 15 possessions. So, obviously, OU scores a lot more points. But in terms of efficiency, Alabama's been better than OU, which OU might have had or they did have one of the 5 to 10 best offenses in Big 12 history. So that's going to be rough for OU's defense. It's going to be probably the best offense they've seen all year. I can't imagine them getting enough stops against that Alabama offense to win that game. So I guess I'll take Bama. That Kyle Cox said this in our side, but that Bama-Georgia game, that felt like the national title. And I know it wasn't a winner get in. I think Bama was in either way. But I can't see Alabama losing in the playoff. Has Gundy hit the recruiting trail? Lincoln Riley was already on a plane this morning recruiting. I don't know. I know he was planning on it at the end of this week. We haven't followed up on that. I'm not sure what he's been doing, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. Speaking of special teams, is Signer injured or bench? I'm pretty sure he's injured. He got injured in the, what game was it? I know he was injured in the OU game, and so I think that's kind of been lingering. So yeah. Do you think Boynton could ever convince Gundy to recruit at the same level that he does? What will it take to fix it? I will never understand. I'm not calling for his job, but it's starting to feel that way. It's fair. I mean, we've talked about it all week on the side. I know people are sick of hearing about Oklahoma State needs to recruit better. Oklahoma State needs to recruit better. But that's the reality of the situation that they're in right now. When they haven't had an elite top 3 rounds in the NFL draft quarterback, they've been pretty average in the Big 12. Now, their ability to attract those kinds of quarterbacks should be praised, should be lauded. Brandon Weeden, Mason Rudolph, you've gotten 5 seasons in the last, 9 out of those 2 guys, and they've been awesome seasons. But you see in the seasons where they don't have those guys, it gets weird. And that's what happens when you don't. That's what happens when you're 40th in the country in recruiting, 45th, and Oklahoma State's 48th in the country in recruiting right now. They're behind like Indiana, Northwestern. That should not be happening. And I don't know what the fix is. I don't know I don't really even know like what the issue is. I don't know if it's a matter of how much work you're putting in or just only chasing guys that fit your culture or whatever. But it's not good right now, and it has to improve, and we've been writing about that all week. Okay. Anybody else got anything? Is Texas back or no? Texas going to the Sugar Bowl is a joke to me. It's, you look at, it's funny because you look at Oklahoma State's 2015 season, they're 10-0, they're number 4 in the country. They go into the Baylor game with a real shot at the college football playoff, and then obviously they get smoked by Baylor and OU, especially OU. But that was a Sugar Bowl team. That was a team where you're like, okay, they had a Sugar Bowl type season. Texas goes out and loses as a favorite against Maryland. They lose as a favorite against Oklahoma State, and they just sort of backdoor their way into a Sugar Bowl. I don't know. I don't like it. They're annoying. Who do you see as the starting quarterback next year? I mean, it's Sanders. I don't see a scenario in which that's not the case. Good question. We'll end on this about how does Bill Snyder retiring affect Oklahoma State's recruiting? I talked to Dustin Ragusa and Kyle Boone about this. They're kind of our two recruiting guys, and they were talking about how like none of the guys. There's like 8 guys committed to Kansas State right now, and none of them are guys that Oklahoma State would go. They're not at positions that Oklahoma State would go after, and they're probably not guys that Oklahoma State would even want. So it's very different than the Texas Tech thing, where some of those guys, and Kyle Boone wrote about this on the site, you can go read about it. Some of the guys that Cliff Kingsbury was recruiting that were committed to Tech, Oklahoma State has a real chance of maybe bringing them in, but there's not really any of those guys out of the 8 that were committed to Kansas State, which how do you only have 8 guys committed on December 2nd? That's not good. So yeah, thanks for your questions. Oklahoma State Liberty Bowl against Missouri. We will continue to do these videos after games and after big events like this, or big, I guess, news like this. And yeah, we got some changes coming to the website in 2019. Nothing huge, but just some kind of small things that are exciting to me and hopefully will benefit you guys as part of this Oklahoma State community. So we'll talk again soon, and thanks for tuning in.